I'm gonna hit go live now, and then I'll wait for it to preview on here. Assuming it sounds good. Kick it off.
Oh yeah, it says I'm live on my end, and it's
okay, sweet.
yeah. Well, there you go.
Hopefully, we're live on Charles's end right now and getting started on mine in 1 second, and then we'll be.
One day I will figure out how to turn off auto stream. How many programmers does it take to figure out the feature set of YouTube Live?
The curious thing is, why is yours so different than mine?
I know, yeah. We literally compared our stream page and our options, and I'm missing a whole bunch of options. I think, well, you're past 100,000 subs, so maybe you have like.
I don't see the stream on mine though. That's weird.
Huh. Well,
it also still says restream in the corner, but you know, it is what it is, I guess.
Wait a minute.
Eventually we'll get the hang of it.
Hold on. I know what the problem is.
Oh yeah? Cool.
No, I don't. I have no idea what the problem is.
Well, I liked your confidence. Made me feel good.
I thought perhaps I was logged into the wrong show. There we go. There's the event. That's the one I want. Save. Okay. We'll try one more time.
Blast this out in tweets. Well, bear with us, folks. We're this is welcome to the Game Dev Show. Wouldn't be a stream if something didn't work out off the bat.
if it worked out right the first time, yeah.
I'd be concerned. I'd be concerned for the rest of the stream if we just started and it was working great. Like I was just waiting for the other shoe to stop.
I see this as a metaphor for real life development. We're showing you that there is genuine mistakes, and even we have them. So this is all part of the show. We're actually doing this as like to demonstrate mistakes that can happen live. You know.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. I like it. See some folks
let me.
Here. Thanks for coming in. Hi, Eric. Hi,
guys. Up no reason to keep
and... Thank you all for joining. I need to push this out onto my social media as well. It's something I haven't done, but yeah, it looks like today we've got some leftover questions from the last stream we did. We got some questions here from the viewers at home, and if you've got any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. We're talking game dev today. It wasn't obvious from the title of the stream, the Game Dev Show.
You want to talk about game development, Charles?
Yeah, I love talking about game development. If it's not programming, game development is my second favorite thing to talk about.
Yeah, me too, man. So yeah, hello everybody too. Thanks. I just got my stream started too. It says the stream bitrate is lower than recommended, so hopefully everything's good and sounds good and works. I don't know. We didn't really test too much, but I think it'll be fine. Right? Anyway, yeah. So we're just gonna Charles here. For anybody that hasn't met Charles and you haven't seen his channel, make sure that you do and go subscribe and check it out. After this, we're gonna switch over to he's doing a premiere, and we just got the link down below, so you can be able to go check that out too. And then Jason is going to share his YouTube channel sometime soon. And we'll talk about that later.
Could be today, could be later.
Watch this space, as they say. Watch this space.
Yep. And yeah, the plan now is just to talk about general game dev stuff, answer questions from people out there, talk about whatever the hell we want to talk about, really. And then I think we're going to just try to continue to do this weekly, just bring in more people, talk about game dev related topics, whatever people are interested in hearing about and stuff. That's about it. I think, right? Yeah. So welcome everybody. If you guys got stuff to you want to hear about, talk about, ask questions about, or whatever, or you just want to say something, feel free. Type in the message and we'll go from there.
I see our first question. Jason Story, when are you gonna upload?
Someday.
He's just this is like a marketing tactic. You're playing the long game. Just building up hype.
It's going to be super exclusive. I'm going to have like 10 seats to watch my videos when they first drop, but everyone has to slowly get access keys to watch my videos.
Well, here's an interesting question that I'm sure would spark a good discussion. What do you guys think about the current state of DOTS, the data-oriented tech stack in Unity? Do I hear a resounding meh?
So personally, like I don't use it too much. I use it lightly, but in most cases, most of the projects that I'm working on right now just don't have the requirements. They don't really have the need for me to jump into it. I'm still kind of waiting to see exactly where it ends up. You know, my guess is that we're going to still. I've always thought that we're going to get most of the benefits without switching frameworks. I think that they'll figure out ways to bring a lot of those those benefits over to the existing workflow. So it's one of those things that I think if you've got a use case for it, it's a great and it's super powerful. But if you don't have a use case for it, it's not something that you need to do necessarily or jump into. That's kind of how I've always felt about it, though. I don't know. What do you think, Jason?
So I think this is a broader topic in terms of things like. So I'm going to apply the same rule to dots as I do to just general optimization. Every so often there'll be some comment on a video saying, "Won't all these functions slow down your game or make it worse or whatever?" And it's like, if you're in a position where the number of functions you have is the problem, the biggest issue for the performance of your game, you must have the most optimized game in the world. And I'd say the same with dots. Like if you're at the point where you're using dots because you want to have 10,000 units or elements on one screen, you must already have a really great game that just needs a lot more people in it, right? Like unless you're literally making a huge game, you've got other problems. Make your game fun, make it small and functional and good. I just think dots exist. It's a good tool, but it's a good tool for people who literally need it. And if you don't need it, don't just try to do it because it's the cool new hotness of what Unity's selling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that says it perfectly.
Yeah, I think we're all of the same mind. It's cool technology. The use cases, I mean, you really have to have a really particular use case for that.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like you have to do like a crazy game. There can be benefits to like doing it on mobile, right? Like you could build it so that your mobile game is more efficient and doesn't eat up the battery and all that and stuff. That's probably not going to sell your game though, right? That's more of like a long-term strategy of like we have all these games, we're doing things and we want to keep our customers going. You know, we want to keep our customers happy and playing longer type things, and we need to
Oh,
optimize.
100%, right?
So,
Like there's a load of
but
stuff in there. There's burst compiler stuff, a ton of other features. Like I'm not saying don't use the cool features that make your game better. I'm just saying
right.
that like you should know if you need those things, right? You're already at a point your game is good and you know what you're doing and you've got a good. It's the fact that you see these people who've never made a game or their first game or they're kind of like still trying to figure out what the game is. It doesn't even matter if it's your first game. If you don't know what the game is yet, you haven't figured out what the mechanic is or is it fun, don't start thinking about ECS. Make it fun before you start going down the road of all of these like micro optimizations.
Yeah.
Yeah, I 300% agree. Now, there's a way to put chat messages on here, so I'm just gonna pop them up. Look at that.
What? That is
I heard
awesome.
Unity requires
cool.
empty constructors for some stuff. Could you explain which and why? I wanted to click on that and try it out. I thought that was really neat. So, yeah,
That's really
Restream's
cool.
awesome.
Thanks for
Gotta-
the question, Ravenin.
Yeah, since I popped it up, I think somebody else should answer it. Charles should answer it. What stuff requires no constructor? Doesn't let you do a constructor.
Mono behaviors, right? Is that
Yeah.
what, yeah, okay. Woo, put me on the spot there.
Quiz. All right. All right. Sorry, Charles. Bye. Yeah. So yeah, it's the mono behaviors. You can't do a constructor because it's all built behind the scenes by Unity's engine. So you do have access to other methods instead. You start, awake, on enable those methods instead of a constructor.
And to elaborate, the reason why is because Unity is handling the instantiation and lifecycle itself. And if you have constructors, what it's going to try and do is build those objects, and it has to know what objects to initialize in those constructors. And how can it do that? So if I had an object that required a character injected into the constructor, how does it know what character I want? So Unity just has a blanket statement of you can't have constructors because then I don't know how to create this object for you. But if you decompile your code and actually open it and look at the objects, it will include in constructor by the time it's built it into your code. It's just an empty constructor. So all objects, literally every object, not just in Unity, every system.object onwards has a default constructor unless you decide to add one that overrides it. So it is there. You're just not allowed to play with it. That's the rule.
Yeah. And I find that hard for some people, especially who come from like a heavy dependency injection background to really deal with. Like, what do I do? I need my constructor to inject stuff, and you gotta, there are ways around it, but
yeah, you have to like either use attributes, like if you use Zenject or whatever it's called these days, Extenject. You can use some attributes to mark certain fields for injection or
strategy patterns,
but yeah,
fields, or there's lots of ways to solve the problem.
Lots of ways to do it.
Do either of you guys or sorry, let's say it this way. Are either of you currently working on projects where you use a dependency injection framework in Unity? Or a dependency injection type setup outside of like the normal Unity?
Oh, you are? Okay.
I do have an Extenject project I'm working on. I can't talk too much about it. It's actually the one I was talking to you guys about before. But the main reason being it's not a game, it's an application. And so it's very service architecture oriented. And so there's a lot of dependencies for things like resolving API calls for logins and that kind of stuff. And so that to me is the perfect example for using a dependency injection framework, where you have different providers and services depending on which platform or which backend you're connecting to, and you want to be able to swap them. Because what all of these injection systems give you, which Unity doesn't have, is what it's called the application root. So Unity is like you press go and 500 scripts all simultaneously awake and start and do stuff. And there's no such thing as like the root point where the application grows from. And if you've worked with .NET as a standard thing, you're used to the main function. This is the very first line of the very first part of my application that starts. And if you don't have that with an application, it can be quite hard to construct your app. And so if you use something that's like a dependency injection framework, it gives you a start point, a place where the application is built and then it runs. So yeah, I use it because I want to construct the state of the application before it runs, and that's a perfect use case for dependency injection.
Huh, that's cool. I'm glad you said that because I was expecting no's like all around. I thought they're like, nope, nope, nope. Like, yeah, that's awesome. And that is like the perfect like situation for it too. I think like when I'm building a business app, like I guess because you actually want to swap things out, and that's the thing. If you're not injecting different stuff ever, then the DI framework isn't really you're not getting the benefit, right? You're not really using. I mean, you should at the very least be injecting things for your unit testing, and if you're not doing any of that, and it's probably overkill. Anyway, I want to go on to more questions and see what other people were curious about. So I'm going to click on this one and just say if anybody wants to ask questions, just type them in chat. Put the question part in their beginning is good. Makes it easier for me to find out which one's a question, or super chat them if you want. So how do you stay motivated? It's a good question.
Ooh, that's a great question.
Yeah, for me, like I put up a bunch of random weird motivational signs. Like every time I go to the store. I got my new one that I got like yesterday. I forgot when I showed you the other weird crap that I got yesterday. I also got another of my like billion motivational signs that I just fill up the office with and the rest of the house. Mostly just because like it's like a loose reminder. I feel like I get a subconscious reminder to like do a lot of things and to work harder and put in more effort. I don't know if it actually works or if I'm just a weirdo, but I feel like just having the things there like in the background, like subconsciously will like kind of motivate me to do things. That and just telling people what I'm doing, like adding accountability to it. Like if I really want to get something done, like I think it's super important. I just tell my wife that I'm doing it at this time and this day. And then I know like if I don't do it, she's gonna, why didn't you do the thing? Why aren't you doing the thing you're supposed to do? And I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta go do it. And it'll just kind of like push me and motivate me. So those are like my two biggest things for just like keeping motivated, which I don't know that they apply to everybody. Hey, weird, random, nerdy little signs are easy. You can print them up, right? What about you guys?
Well, the accountability thing is great. I mean, it's awesome to have accountability, and that's where joining a community or having a group of friends or your wife. I mean, the wife thing actually works for me too. I tell Natalie. I even told her today, like, oh, I have a meeting with Jason, and she's like, all right, cool. And then last night, we were hanging out, staying up a little late, and she's like, you got that call in the morning. And I was like, all right, you're right, totally. I gotta go to bed. But the other thing that I try to do is I try to mitigate demotivation, if that sounds a little too like vague, but essentially, I know the things that take me out of my work. I know the things that make me not want to complete something. Like for instance, if I'm working and I have chats or emails coming in, that's an obvious one. Like those are distracting. So I try to turn those off. But also, like I know I'm sure a lot of people do this too, but I tend to like doodle. So like I'll just open up, if I'm working on code, I'll like over refactor, or like I have a lot of fun over engineering something, and like, ooh, what if I like separated this class out and I didn't, just going down the rabbit hole of things. So I try to make sure that whenever I sit down to work on something, I'm very intentional and like I have an end point. So if it's like I don't know, implementing like a day-night cycle, something I did recently. And that was an example where I started to over-engineer. Like I just have to keep telling myself, like right now, I'm just trying to make the sun and the moon, rotate around the scene, and that's it. I'm not trying to make it easy to use. I'm not trying to fit in a clock a world clock into this thing. I'm not trying to make it affect the temperature in my world, which, believe it or not, that's something that I started to do. I was like, when the sun's up, it should be hotter, huh? And I started writing like a temperature class, and I was like, no. So I try to make like a clear end goal and be really intentional every time I work. Like, this is what I'm trying to get out of this hour block of me working. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, exactly the same. I think I was going to say something very similar, which is the biggest problem I think a lot of people do is if you decide today I need to get a certain feature in, like whatever day-night cycle, and you could sit there and you could do 12 hours of work just powering through. And if you add 12 features that aren't the day-night cycle, you still feel like a failure at the end of the day because you sat down with one goal in mind and you failed to do the one goal. So I like to use the rule or the suggestion of how do you eat an elephant? Well, one bite at a time, right? You do it slowly. So the easiest way to keep motivated is to take the thing you actually want to do that you're probably going to procrastinate and not want to do and start slicing it up into smaller and smaller and smaller blocks. And each one is a success. And so you can start your day with, I want to build a day-night cycle. Well, first thing, I want to have a script which keeps track of the time of day. Then I want to write a script which moves the sun. Then I want a script which can move the sun based on the time of day, or I want to like tie them together. And if you do that, you can give yourself wins throughout the day. And so when you pause at lunchtime or you're getting tired, you want to get a coffee or whatever, you've already got like wins under your belt. So rather than the alternative where you could end the day feeling like you've lost, you can win every 20 minutes with some new little thing added, and you're slowly moving towards your goal. And even if you ended your day without the day-night cycle done, but you've got proven check marks along the path to that goal, you'll feel more like a winner than if you'd done hours of work on non-related features. So keep yourself motivated on the same task by writing down the actual goal and then start slicing it up into smaller pieces until you're doing at least something towards the actual goal. So yeah, same thing you were saying, Charles.
I see some questions on my side. If you don't mind, if I know you probably won't be able to pull them up on screen, but I'd love to give.
I can't pop it up, but yeah,
I'll give
we
a
got to
little
figure
love.
that out. That's the next step. I think we need to set up a whole separate channel too for it.
Yeah.
Questions. That'd be cool.
Yeah, that's a thought. That's
We'll
a good
figure it all out. Yeah.
idea. Yeah, we're just working out the kinks. I
So we
didn't
can
even
take lots of questions. Now that we know we can pop questions up.
That's such an awesome feature. I really like that.
So what was the question you wanted to pop up? And I'll type it into my chat and then I'll pop it up on the screen.
Can you really? Oh, that's
I can
fair enough.
type it into my own chat and then it'll look like it's from me.
All right.
So I'm sorry I'm stealing your question.
Thoughts on building code into custom DLLs? I brought that one up because I know that's something that we've talked about quite a bit, and it seems like one of those more intermediate to advanced topics that's super scary. So I think it'd be a good thing to address. Nice. This question's not from Jason; it's from Tanuj Cherian. Thank you for the question. Appreciate it.
Sorry, I had to steal it, but so yeah, here's my question, Charles. Do you have any thoughts on building code into custom DLLs?
I'd like to kick this over to Jason because I think he's got a lot of good things to say about it. Put him on the spot.
I have literally spoken for hours and hours on this topic, so I'll try to keep it short. I think the common misconception is that it's a different thing. So myself and Charles did a stream on this a long time ago where we showed you over the course of 2 hours that so people talk about how slow Unity is. I just changed one word in my code. Why the hell do I have to wait for the bar to load again and everything rebuilds and goes through all this stuff? And that's because that's what it's doing. It's recompiling your entire application when you change that one word. So the point is, it's already doing that. And so DLLs are being built for you in the background. So the idea of what's your thoughts about building custom DLLs? Well, you already are. You're just not in control of it. Unity's doing it for you. So the option is, if you either use assembly definitions, you can control more of that flow, but still let Unity do it for you. Or in my preference, you go to the side, write your own DLL, and use a little build pipeline script to drop it into Unity. It's all the same thing, though. It's just different flavors of the same idea. I just prefer having more control over that because I understand how the MS build system works. But if you don't, and just look at the basics of using assembly definitions, you can still control it yourself. So the answer is I like it because it's not different. It's just more control over the process of choosing which parts build. And I guess the last part of that is, why would you care? Why do you want control over custom DLLs? Well, as we said, if you change one word at all in your entire application, the entire application has to be rebuilt because every part of it could have changed. It doesn't know what's relevant or different. But if you use assembly definitions or custom DLLs and you've got like a health system and you change a little piece of the health system, the only thing that recompiles is the health system. So you can cut your application up into smaller and smaller pieces and then just rebuild the portion that changes. So there's a lot of value in custom DLLs once you know why and what it's doing.
Didn't mean to hit that. That's what I think of your.
I
That's
love
how I hate
it all.
custom DLL.
We're like, what?
Like, all right, go ahead, continue.
That was special.
No, that was perfect timing. It's weird because that's the one thing. Like, I really don't like building custom DLLs anymore. I used to do it. Now, but I do like assembly definitions. So I like to use them as a good placeholder. Did I freeze Jason completely with my
Yeah,
funniness?
looks a little frozen there. Well,
Whoops, I accidentally killed him.
hopefully he comes back. I was gonna say, like, just to piggyback on Frozen Jason's response there. There's a practical use for DLLs where it speeds up your development, but it also helps you. This takes time to learn and a lot of experience, but helps you define system boundaries. So a lot of the times, everyone's heard of spaghetti code. Spaghetti code usually happens when you don't have proper system boundaries, sort of separating pieces of your code that don't need to communicate, that really shouldn't be communicating. So that's definitely something that, look into system boundaries as another good thing that comes out of DLLs. Sorry.
That's kind of one of the benefits is that you hard lock those boundaries. I think I accidentally knocked Jason. I was trying to change our background and I hit the video button on accident.
Oh no,
like,
we lost
let me
Jason.
just swap out the background so we can have something that looks a little bit more game devy. All right, let's bring it back in.
Oh, there he is.
Welcome back.
I just saw our little private chat.
I was trying to change our background when I played the video.
Don't worry, that wasn't your fault. Literally, my actual house internet just dropped out there for a few seconds, so it was a coincidence. It wasn't your fault.
Perfect.
Nice.
It's good timing.
I just saw a private chat that I misspelled infallible in my name, which is ironic. That's beautiful. All right, sorry. Go ahead.
But yeah, I personally just like the assembly definitions though for that. Like I mostly just because I don't like the process of exiting Unity and coming back in and going through the build pipeline. Like I feel like it's just an extra step that I don't really get anything from. If I just use assembly definitions, I can have the same forced separation and lock things down. And even then, I don't do a whole lot of it. But it's because I'm also just not reusing a lot of things too. So. But yeah, it's interesting. Like I found a lot of people that I've known who started programming a long time ago and like started doing DLLs like when they first came out, still like hold on to it really tightly as a thing that they love to do, even if it doesn't work really well in their workflow and it makes their workflow harder. I think sometimes it can make it easier, but I've seen a lot of times where it just.
In my case, I find the big issue is that if you use assembly definitions, you still have one of the same problems, which is if you do change something in code, you have to wait for Unity to refresh and it freezes the editor. And that little moment can be just really frustrating building up over time. If you use a separate DLL and you use a build definition to copy the output directory into Unity, it's asynchronous. So you can write your code and in the process of saving, it'll rebuild the other one. So by the time you go back to Unity, there's no bar or loading or anything. So there's I don't have to deal with that waiting process while it restructures the code again. So there's little time saves that build up over time for me.
Yeah, but you can get that with assembly definitions too, though. You should be able to.
Yeah, but I guess there's always still going to be the one you're currently working on. My point is that if you change the code, it's going to be if you have it on the same screen, literally as I write the code, it's rebuilding the thing for me, and I don't have to it doesn't block my control of the system. But these are micro things, and like you said, there's probably an element of it that I've just been working with C# and DLLs for 11 years, so I'm used to it. It doesn't phase me in the same way that it might for other people. So
becomes muscle memory.
Yeah,
totally agree. So I had another question pop up that I thought would be interesting to answer. If you guys want to jump onto it, can you see it there?
I had a bunch of questions like that on my side too. Yeah.
Is it better to have polished code or finished projects, independent of how good the code is? So. For me, a polished project with minimal but good code is, I would say, ideal. Like something that's not too massive but comes together well and is small and easy to get your head around relatively quickly. Because if you throw some big project at them that's got a ton of stuff, they're just not going to be. Most people aren't going to dig through your code. They don't have the time to go through your code and stuff. You have to really, I think, wow them in the first minute or two with what you've built, the polish level of it, and the the presentation of it too. The way that you present the things that you've done matters a lot. If you've got a really nice web page around it that kind of highlights what you've done on it, how you did it, and some of the cool things, it's a lot better than a GitHub page with here's all the code and the stuff. Because the GitHub page is cool, but and can be useful for some people, but most of us don't have the time to go through your code, see if it's right, if it works. Like, is this even a good project? Like, we have to. It takes a lot to understand whether or not code is. I mean, it's easy to tell if code is bad, but it's hard to tell if code is good and actually works. It takes a lot of energy and time that most people just don't have, I think, when they're hiring. At least not for 50 applicants. You're not going to go through all their stuff. Or when I was at Qualcomm, we used to get like 300, 400 applicants for a job.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used 20 or 30 a day when I was looking through CVs to try to find somebody. And like you said, you don't want to look at every single profile's entire backlog. I always say that look at it from the perspective of the person hiring. They don't care. They don't want to see everything you've ever made. They want to see your best foot forward. What is this person like to work with? What is the quality that I can expect to get from them? And I would say this can go both ways badly. So either you put too many projects up and try to show off, and it's like, well, I don't know what I'm looking at. Just give me the 2 things you are proud of that demonstrate what kind of work you can do. But at the same time, don't try to make it perfect code. Don't be that person who's got comments on every line and is like trying to be really clever and using tons of design patterns. Because to me, then that's what I call the graduate problem. Somebody has had so much time to noodle over this project that I can tell it's not a commercial project. I don't want to see someone's ability to write code in a vacuum where they can like muse over it for months. I want to see, what do you like to work with? What is the code you would produce a project with? And so the truth is, there's a different level of expectation for clean code or quality code in a real environment versus a sort of hypothetical, nice, polished little sandbox. So the truth is, it has to be good enough that I can see you understand principles and patterns, but not so good that I'm suspicious that you probably sat there for the last 5 months tweaking every word to the point where it's like, you won't actually work like this when we work together. So it's a fine line, but I think the more you do this, the more you just get a handle on what that line is. Write code that you want to write, the code you would want to work with. That's the simple truth. Write the code you would want someone else to give you in a project. Approachable, well written, but not like artistically labored over to the point that it's unrealistic.
Yeah.
I think there's some easy wins there too for people that a lot of people miss out on with simple things like spelling. Make sure that everything is spelled correctly and spelled the same. Don't switch up your spelling between different instances of the thing. That the casing is all matching. Like the casing of each of your types of things should be the same all the time. All of your methods should use the same casing. All your variables should use the same casing. And the ordering of the file, like just cleaning these things up and cleaning the tab indentation. Hold Control, hit K, hold it down again, and hit D, and suddenly your code looks better. If you're not doing the bare minimum to make your code clean, readable, removing extra white space and adding the extra line of white space where it's needed, it's a big sign, because that means that, hey, this is how ugly the code is going to look. So make the code look clean and nice.
Please don't give me 200 lines of commented out code in the center of your damn project. If I open
it should be none.
Code.
There should be no commented out code. If there's commented out code, I'm immediately going, I don't want to work with someone who's going to leave chunks of dead code in the middle of the project.
Right.
Yeah.
And make sure it works. I don't know how many times I've seen people submit sample projects that won't even compile. Right? Like, you're like, oh, this doesn't actually compile because it has typos in it and errors and is missing things and the wrong casing to call methods. Like, you didn't even try this thing and run it. And that's an extreme, but I have seen it too many times, which makes me sad.
There's other stuff too. Like I would say what's more important than like super optimized, look, I've demonstrated, I've used all the design patterns, is indications of experience with certain problems. So a very good example is if I see somebody do material.color equals color.red, I'm like, hang on a second, that's fine. That's a technically fine line of code. But if I'm actually hiring someone, they need to know what property blocks are and they know how to use property blocks. If you're just assigning the color and instantiating new materials for every instance, that's a flag to me that they don't know some of the, like, what I would consider fundamental optimization stuff in Unity. So you don't have to know all of them. I'm not expecting everyone to be a genius at this stuff, but there's things you pick up if you've done more than 2 or 3 projects, right? If you've looked into this enough, there are certain things that I would look for as a sign of, okay, they know what they're doing. So it's not just about the code quality. It's about, are you solving the problems the right way?
Yeah, I think that applies less to the newbies, though, right? Right.
Sure, yeah.
At
You can
that
never
part,
watch
because that
Fire
was like
Flow, yeah.
on jumping in. By the way, there was a funny question that popped up, which was exactly what you had mentioned, that Restream logo that we've got up there. It is not. It does not mean it's not live. It's live. It's just we started it before we upgraded the account to remove the branding. So it's just Restream.io. It's freaking awesome, and it makes this whole thing like easy for us to do. But we are live. I just thought it was funny to show because Jason was like, "Hey, that's gonna confuse people," and you're dead on. Yeah.
Oh, I just got
Um,
a really nice super chat, by the way, from Raphael Lazarin. He says, I got a new job because of you guys. Thanks.
oh,
Cool.
sweet! Congrats.
Congratulations.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Glad to help. All
Oh, wait,
right.
that was the one that I just popped up. There was another one. Let me
Yeah,
see.
that
There
looks
were a couple
familiar.
more questions in here. Oh, this one I don't know the answer to. I don't know if any of you guys do. How to share code that uses code that's not
Ooh,
yours
you
in a
don't.
legal way. Yeah, I would think that unless it's under
That's
the
the
right
answer.
Creative Commons license, you can't. And I just get terrified to even do it because I don't really understand that stuff. Like I would want to talk to a lawyer, so I just don't share other people's stuff. Same with like art and things. Like I just get terrified. I'm like, go grab the art, download the art yourself. Like
I,
'cause
ca- I
I don't
can
understand it.
I can actually speak from experience here. As you know, anyone who follows my channel knows, I try to share my code for my patrons. So, like, if I have an example in a video, I would love to share that code. But I always get caught up in this little middle ground because I want my projects to look. I'd love to be able to display or like have like really nice models that I purchase off the Unity Asset Store, or in some cases I use things like DoTween or plugins like that. But I found that I can't obviously I can't share those projects because if I have a license for DoTween Pro, I can't share that project. And if I'm using a bunch of really cool models that I purchase off the Unity Asset Store, I can't just give that out. So it's been a struggle. And from my research, and seems like an obvious answer in retrospect, you cannot share that. So what I end up having to do is the project that I use in the video, I will strip it down for my patrons and use primitives, or I'll just write my own tweening if I really need to tween something, or just won't tween at all. I'll remove all animations. So yeah, unfortunately, that's just what happens. And another thing too is if you are using those sorts of assets in your project and it's on GitHub, you're going to want to make your repo private because you don't want to allow other people to clone it or fork it, and then you're essentially giving away someone's hard work for free, and that's not cool.
Yeah, I think there's 3 layers to this. Layer 1 is just don't. Wherever possible, don't use an asset that you don't need. For example,
Yes.
I think that Odin is awesome. Odin is a really cool asset, but I will not use it in projects which I know I'm handing off to a client because I don't want to force them to say, hey, here's a thing that you won't see, that you see no value for, go and buy it for no reason. So that's what.
And you have to upgrade it, right?
Yeah, exactly. And
There you
so
go.
the second one though is if you want to try to solve this problem sort of in a simpler way, well then the way I would usually approach it would be, yes, you go to the client and say you need to buy these things. Less in the case of Odin, but if using something like DoTween, if you can say this is a market improvement to the asset, like if I'm building you a project and you want cool animations, let them know you'll have to pay for this. Are you okay with that? And then that becomes a cost of the person that's consuming your code. That's different for a client project versus like giving away code on GitHub. The third option is the much more kind of advanced problem, which is you use a strategy pattern. So what you effectively do is you say, I have this thing like panels that swipe in and animate on screen. Well, what you've got there is you've got something that displays things, an animation system. And you would say panel.show. So you show the object, you swipe it in, it displays. And what you can do is you can put a interface around that and say thing.show, thing.hide, and then you use the fancy DoTween stuff yourself. But when you go to distribute it, you write a simpler version of that, which is just turn on or off or use a canvas group or something. And so you can distribute it without the DoTween implementation, and then you can provide the DoTween version for people who want to use that as an extra add-on. I do this for text a lot. I will create something called a text source, and I will then use either the TextMesh Pro version or the Unity UI text. So all of my projects, it doesn't matter what it is. If I'm showing you like a custom console or UIs and panels, I don't care whether you want to do it via the Unity UI or TextMesh Pro. I will personally default to Text Mesh Pro. It's miles better, but I know that's a sticking point. If someone wants to take something I wrote and put in an old project, it might crap out if they have to suddenly import Text Mesh Pro or match different versions. So the answer, kind of the more complex answer, is you can draw a boundary line there and actually architect your code to support any solution. But that's a hard question, and it's hard to understand how to do that. It takes experience to do that. So yeah, the short answer is just don't, unless you know what you're doing and you can kind of walk that line. But yeah.
I need to make something sophisticated, like what you did, Jason, like for my models, so that I can just have a model provider that replaces primitives with actual nice models.
On that topic, a
Ooh.
great question that's very related. Yeah, see it? The asking about like how you're building classes. So are you usually modeling classes and how they're related using some UML? And what other techniques are you using for working for you to produce good code? I assume you guys all have answers to this. Mine's really, really short. That no, I do not pre-plan. I don't pre-plan them, but I do kind of like to post-plan them and retrospect on them and then change them in response. So I like to create them. I understand kind of in my head what I want to do with them. And then once I'm done and I've got it kind of working, then I will map it out. So usually I'll do it. What I used to do, like my habit all the time was, let me switch it so I can wave my hands around like a lunatic. But what I used to do was keep shit in notebooks. So I've got, they're back behind me. I got like stacks of notebooks down there. I don't want to pull them out right now. It's a big mess. But I would write down like what the architecture looks like, how things are tied together, drawing the lines and stuff, and then make sure that like there weren't things that I wasn't anticipating beforehand. Because what I'll find is sometimes while I'm coding it and building things out, I might slip into a shortcut, right? I accidentally gave myself access to something I shouldn't have access to from somewhere that's going to be a problem later, and I realize that. So I'll go back and fix it. My new plan, or the new thing that I use for it, that I showed you guys earlier, and like I said, even became a sponsor because it's so freaking cool, is I use that Milanote tool. So I use it's Milanote. I freaking love it. Just sponsored video today.
We gotta get this show sponsored, man.
Yeah, well, don't worry about that later. But yeah, I mean, it's so freaking cool for like showing the architecture and design that like everybody that I've showed it to who's a software dev, or at least the couple guys that I've showed it to so far, have like integrated it into their workflow and like started modeling out their code in their projects. Like I showed them my architecture layout, kind of the ones that I showed you, and they started doing the same thing, doing database diagrams and all kinds of other stuff, because it lets you kind of tie all the things together and make notes. So I don't pre-do it at all, but I definitely post-do it, and I use the info that I get from looking at that to fix the problems or the architectural issues that I think I might see in the future, and to try to make it as good as possible. So, what about you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I take a similar approach. I don't do any sort of UML or use any tools like that. Like I just try to, and this kind of goes in line with what I was saying about motivation. Like I'm always just trying to solve one problem at a time. You know, that is, so I just write the code that I need to solve that one problem. And I try to do it in a way that is obviously readable and something that's enjoyable for me to use. So as far as like architecting or any engineering I would do, it would be like, I would just make sure that variables are easy to read, and maybe I encapsulate something into like a getter method or something like that. And then I just build and build and build. Like iteration is the name of the game when I develop. So it's just, what am I trying to solve now? Do that. Okay. Does it work? Beautiful. What's the next requirement? Okay, let me add that requirement in. And then, of course, you know, the more experience you have, and if you specialize in one particular type of thing, you know, you will eventually get to a point where you can sort of pre-architect ahead of time, and you don't have to step through the iterative steps. But like this example of the day and night cycle, like I had no idea how I was going to do that. I had, you know, I knew a little bit about how the directional lights work, and I was like, all right, I just know that I need to make them spin. Okay, so I started with that, and then I started learning more and more. And then that's another thing that, you know, is advice that I have gotten and given when it comes to writing. You know, if you're the type of writer like me, you know, you will painstakingly try to perfect like the first paragraph, and then you'll move on to the next paragraph. But what you really should do, the most beneficial way to work, is to just write a full rough draft and then edit the whole thing as a whole. So, relating that to code, like just try to write what you need, get it done. And then like Jason said, then you can kind of go back and see where architecture will emerge, design patterns will emerge, and you will see them. And if you're well versed in them, you'll be able to recognize like, oh, it looks like I use the strategy pattern here. Oh, I use the state pattern here. And then maybe you can sort of like, go back and make it a little like cleaner and nicer. But yeah, essentially I don't do any sort of upfront planning with like UMLs or things like that.
I'm as probably no surprise, I agree with both of you, and I also don't do the upfront planning. Although I'm going to take it a bit weirder and go a little bit kind of high level with the idea, because I think the reason why we're all saying the same thing stems from the same idea. So let's like do a sidestep here and talk about food, right? What is the point of food? Food is just about sustenance. Like as a raw thing, the only point of food is to keep you alive. It doesn't serve any other real purpose. But then why is there an entire industry around chefs and cooking and culinary arts? Because clearly there's something more to it than just sustenance. There's something else there. And that's because people like to enjoy food and they like to sort of make more out of it. And I'd say the same thing about code. What is the point of code? Well, if you're being really clinical about it, it's to automate manual processes. The point of code is to take something somebody wants to do and automate the process. But then why is there all of this? Why are we having a giant conversation with tons of people talking about it? Well, there's more to it than that. And that more is what I consider software craftsmanship. And the general principle is, why do we do this? Well, the point of any of the architecture, all of the stuff we talk about, is to solve one problem, one constant in all of software, and it's called change, which is basically when you build any system, it will change. The requirements will change, your understanding of the system will change, everything will change. And so all architecture, all the stuff we're talking about, boils down to how do you make your code resistant to change? How can I change it without breaking it? How do I add new features without breaking it? How do I make it grow and extend in a way that's sustainable for future projects? And so with that in mind, if you try to upfront plan, the metaphor I use is it's like building a house and just placing random walls in the house with the assumption that I know I need walls, I might as well just put some in and hope they're the right walls, which is obviously nonsense, right? You have no idea what's going to happen under what shapes. So the planning you should do is exactly the amount of planning needed for what you're actually doing. So I would suggest when you're asking yourself how to plan, comes back to the whole stepping through it slowly, is you make a requirement. So you say, I need a system that can X. And you plan as far as the X, just one small thing. And then when you're done, look at the shape of the system and how do you grow it in the right direction. So don't try to build this epic super system, because you will end up having to trim trees and structure it and whatever. And that's the problem with UML. UML is like, this is really cool. I can model my system, so I want the whole thing to be massive and have all of these trees and branches and interfaces and multiple. It's like, it doesn't work like that. What you need to do is make a thing that does a thing, then make a thing that does the next thing. And then if this needs to do two things, you split it off, you make two things, and you grow it naturally based on the requirements your system actually has. So the short answer is no, I don't upfront plan, but as Jason said, I will refactor, because at a certain point in your system, you'll pause and go, hang on a second, am I moving in the right direction? Is there something that I'm doing which seems like it's causing like top heavy, there's too much under this, or the system isn't right? So I'll pause and I will ask if I can restructure the same code in a way that makes sense. So rather than trying to upfront plan everything, take regular intervals to stop, analyze your code, and ask yourself if you can refactor in a way that makes it easier to work with. So again, your goal is to optimize for change and also for you working with it. So that's what I would say, I would suggest.
Yep.
I think it's worth noting that sometimes that change too is not in your company, just like the world changes around you, right? Like technology changes, the competition changes for your company, and other things like,
I've had vendor companies drop out. The entire code base suddenly stops working because one of the vendors stopped supporting what we're needing. And so it's like, shit, I have to completely change this entire system. And because I assumed I have no trust in any vendor, I just trimmed one line and put a different interface on the end of it, and everything worked beautifully. It took me one day to fix the fact that our entire backend architecture stopped working. And so because it's just kind of anticipating these sorts of things. But like I said, you don't pre-plan complicated stuff. You just draw a line and say, I can't trust this, so I'll put a little boundary here to be sure that I can work with it.
I also like what you said about like your understanding changes too. And I think that's important. Like that has a huge effect on how you proceed. And if your understanding of something changes, you should change the way you're developing your project in response to that. So that's a really, I never really heard it articulated like that. So I like that.
Yeah. It's good stuff. I know we only have a few more minutes until your premiere, so I want to go over it. But there were a couple more questions. This one just seemed like a fun one, so I figured I'd just jump on it. what are things that might cause you to have to start over when making a 3D MMO?
I'm not. This is you guys. I'm out of this one.
Yeah, a whole bunch of things could cause you to have to start over. Usually, I would say it's probably just a lack of planning, right? Or planning that didn't go well. Like planned for something to happen and that didn't happen, and code becomes a big mess. Like I've seen it happen for a lot of places where they have not just on MMOs, but in general, just 3D games. Like people start to build something up, they get this idea, and then the idea for what the game is going to be completely changes along the way. So like they start to build one thing and then they get it, the idea for the game has become something completely different and their current architecture and setup just doesn't support it. Like say you're building an MMO and your initial design is, hey, we're going to have this game and everybody's going to be in groups of, up to 12 people. You're never going to have more than 12 people around you, right? You build your game with that in mind and then suddenly, halfway through, they're like, "Oh yeah, no, we're gonna have massive battles with 1,000 on 1,000 combat." Suddenly, your entire game architecture has to change, right? Because the things that you could do and were planning to do, and I have coded for this 12-person thing, don't work and are not viable for the 1,000-person thing. And you either have to, have prepared for it and planned for it to be able to kind of swap things out and scale, or you didn't, and because that was not part of the scope, and scope changed, and you're screwed and got to redo the whole thing. So it's I mean, there are lots of other things that could happen. Code base could just be a giant mess. The network stack could be a mess. The art pipeline could be super problematic. We could just get a bunch of money from another 3D engine too. I've seen that where people are building a game and they get funding from some companies like, hey, we'll give you $3 million, switch to our engine. Done. That kind of thing. So those are some of the things, but I don't know. I just thought it was a fun question. I'm sure you guys have seen similar types of things, just not MMO related, right?
I was gonna say, like, you could apply this to, it doesn't have to be an MMO or even a particular 3D MMO. Like if
Doesn't even have to be a game.
if you find that if you're at a point in your project where you have to start it over, my assumption is that you didn't do enough upfront planning. And I'm not talking about making UML diagrams, but trying to understand what is the scope of your project. What are the constraints for your project? What is the, I don't know. And the example that you brought up, Jason, like, oh, if we're only this game's gonna have 12 players at any one time, but then all of a sudden you've decided you're gonna have massive battles. That's scope creep. That's feature creep, and you should kill it anytime it happens. You know what I mean? Like if you start adding features. Probably a more practical example would be you're creating an RPG and all of a sudden you're like, you know what, it would be great if I had a crafting element here. Let me just add crafting. Well, I mean, that's a huge thing. I mean, crafting is no trivial matter. So you really need to make a decision at that point. Like, is crafting really the play that's going to make, like, does my game need crafting fundamentally to make it, a success? And then if it doesn't, then you need to kill that and not do that and not restart your project.
I would say even more than just the problem of feature creep in terms of adding new features. There's a common misunderstood concept of game development, which has nothing to do with the pragmatism of actually writing the code and building it. But the fact is, there's an identity to a game. So your game has an intention. Like, what kind of game is it? Is it grungy? Is it like whimsical? Is it about the crafting? Effectively, we're talking about the game loop. Minute to minute, what is the person playing the game doing? And sometimes what I've seen destroy a project is people want all these cool things. So they start out with a game that's all about sword fighting, and they add crafting, and they add trees, and they add building. And all of a sudden, the identity of the game is gone, and it's like, holy shit, this isn't fun anymore. What happened? And what happened was they've stopped paying attention to the point of the game. They started looking at features as if it's like, surely more features makes it more fun. So the first thing that can destroy a game like that is just losing sight of what game you're making. So start by having that sandbox, the white box, the gray box, whatever you want to call it, build an example of your game and go, is this loop fun? And then how do I extend onto it? Every new feature should be actually solidifying that core game loop, not just throwing features in because other games have them. So I've seen games die because they've tried to copy their competitors' features, but that's not what their game is. And so they've actually lost any interest because now they're a poor knockoff of something else rather than focusing on their own strengths.
Yeah.
That happens a lot. It's a common problem people run into.
So I have a minute before the premiere. I'm gonna have to end it on my side so that I can let my channel premiere. Just I wanted to mention that, so I didn't just dip out in the middle of answering a question.
Okay. Well, yeah, I figured we probably just wrap it in a second, just answer this last question, but I'd love to keep doing this. I mean,
Yes,
to be honest, like I could sit on here and talk all day. We could hop back on again.
we talked
Or-
about doing it weekly, and I think this is a good time slot for me if it works for you guys.
yeah, I think we'll definitely be on here.
Yeah, I can see that being a thing. Yeah.
All right, cool.
So,
well, if I have
but
nothing,
there was one more question, and I
Yeah.
need to point them over to your channel, which was if you're not working in game dev, how can you learn some best practices, optimization patterns? And it says the Unity docs usually tell you how things work and not the proper way to use them. So I would say subscribe. Go subscribe to Charles's channel. He gives lots of good detail stuff.
appreciate it.
And Jason's will have some stuff sometime. He's over there sometime soon. And also, I've got some courses down below there somewhere you can check out too. But I would say definitely just subscribe to some of these channels and start looking at some of the patterns and practices type stuff, architecture related stuff. And then I think that'll help a little bit at least.
And this is one thing I would say as well, just because I see this kind of question a lot. Don't for your own sanity, don't just try to consume everyone's best examples and practices and that kind of thing, because you'll drive yourself insane. There's a million keywords. We can start talking about polymorphic dispatch and all these other things, and it's like, I need to learn all these words and what's the strategy path. Just take a deep breath. That's not how you write code that's good and sustainable. You write code that you want to work with. So be practical and just write your code in such a way where you ask yourself, do I enjoy working with this code? Like the way to learn is by seeing the pitfalls. So you'll write some code and you'll say, this is annoying. I can't talk to this thing over here because the code doesn't let me, or it's hard to work with, or I have to keep copying and pasting if statements. So the architecture comes from solving those problems. So I would say focus on that. Don't try to yes, read the books and learn this stuff, but the way to get better at writing code is to actually think about your code. Ask yourself, do you enjoy working with it? And write code that you'd prefer to work with. So just work with your own code, basically.
Yeah, and improve it. Just constantly
definitely.
make it better. Check it out. We can watch your stream.
Although,
fancy.
please click the link because those analytics, those
yeah. Click the link. Go check out the stream. He's premiering in just a second. I just wanted to pull it up so that way I didn't.
Appreciate it. When I end my stream, anyone who's on my stream right now, it should take you to this premiere, and I'll be in the chat over there, and maybe the Jasons will too.
Yeah, I think we'll just jump over to that in a second. Cool. And then, like I said, I got another video coming out later today on just game dev jobs. I think Josh is finishing up the editing on that now. So, I'll drop it in there too. I think I have it.